Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep into honey farming in Africa today.
Ooh, exciting.
It is. It really fits with what you're always telling us you like, right?
Yeah.
All those sustainable initiatives that can help rural communities.
Yeah, for sure.
For this deep dive, we're going off of this article, The Sweet Potential, How Honey Farming Can Transform Rural African Communities. And it's really, really interesting.
I was just reading it this morning, and it just highlights how Africa could be like the honey place, Not just any honey, but like premium honey that everyone wants because of how diverse it is there.
Okay, see, that's already something I hadn't thought about. I knew that Africa had all those different ecosystems, but I never connected that to their honey.
Right. It's like every region could have its own like special flavor, right?
Its own honey fingerprint almost.
Exactly. Plus, they've already got all these traditional beekeeping practices, all across the continent.
So they're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, not at all. It's like building on generations and generations of knowledge.
That's pretty cool. A mix of ancient wisdom and super modern market opportunity.
Right.
But how big is the global honey market anyway?
Oh, it's huge. We're talking over $8 billion every year. And it's just getting bigger. People are getting picky, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want natural stuff, organic stuff with a good story. And African honey?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got it all.
So if we can help those communities make more honey and connect them with the right people, it could really change things.
Totally.
The article also said that honey farming isn't just about honey.
Right. Beeswax, propolis, royal jelly, all sorts of things you can get from bees.
Yeah. Like a whole industry in itself.
Exactly. Lots of different things to make and sell. Good for when things change,
I see what you mean. Like if the price of honey goes down, you have those other things to sell.
Exactly. It's like a backup plan.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And unlike crops that are, vulnerable when the climate changes,
right,
honey can do well in all kinds of conditions, right?
It really can. It's a good safety net, especially when the weather's unpredictable.
Totally. So it's sustainable in a bunch of ways, right? For the environment, for people's wallets.
Yeah.
But what about the practical side of things? Like how much does it actually cost to get started?
Compared to other farming stuff, it's actually not that expensive to get going. Hives, the gear to stay safe, some basic training, and if you do the cooperative thing...
Cooperatives, yeah.
It's even easier to get started.
Okay, cooperatives. I was hoping we could talk about those. The article mentioned them, but I want to hear your take. How do they actually work for honey farming?
They're awesome for pooling resources, sharing knowledge, getting trained together. It's better than everyone trying to do it all alone.
Makes sense.
Plus, they can work together to sell their honey and get better prices.
Strength in numbers, right?
Yep. And remember that story about the Sweet Success Project in Tanzania?
The women-led cooperative.
That's the one. They've done amazing things. They're making more money. They're independent. And they're even putting some of their profits back into their community.
Schools, healthcare, the whole thing. That's incredible.
Right.
But wouldn't a project like that be hard to copy somewhere that's, less organized?
That's a really good question. And it kind of leads us to another thing the article talked about, how important bees are for pollinating,
Oh, right. Healthy crops need bees.
Exactly. Honey farming doesn't just give you products, it helps the whole area.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes I forget just how important they are.
It's easy to forget.
Can you remind me, and everyone listening, about how bees actually help with food security?
Basically, more bees equal more food. More pollination means more crops, which means more food for everyone, and everyone being more financially stable. It's especially important in places where food security is a big concern.
Right. And the article mentioned some projects in Nigeria that were really successful, right?
Yeah, they did. They started beekeeping, and they saw these huge increases in how much they were growing. Cashews, citrus, maize.
Really?
Yeah. It's a good reminder that bees help everybody, not just the honey farmers.
So it's not just about making honey, it's about making the whole system work better.
Exactly.
But it can't all be good news.
Right.
The article also talked about some challenges.
Well, every industry has its challenges, right?
True.
Like sometimes it's hard to get good equipment or training. Sometimes it's hard to get your honey into the market where people will buy it. And then there's things like deforestation and pesticides.
Deforestation and pesticides. Those sound especially scary, since bees need a healthy environment to survive.
Yeah, they do.
Are any governments in Africa working on making rules about pesticides to protect the bees?
They are, and that's a perfect way to start talking about all the different groups that are working to help the honey industry. We're seeing governments, NGOs, and even private companies all doing some really cool things.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's what I love about these deep dives,
Yeah.
We get to look at the problems, but also all the solutions people are coming up with. Gives me hope.
You too. It's inspiring.
It is. So tell me, what about the African Development Bank? They've been giving money to beekeeping projects, right?
They have?
What kind of projects are they focusing on? Like, is it about giving equipment or training or something else entirely?
It's a little bit of everything. Like some of that money is going towards getting modern equipment, like those honey extractors, which can like really boost how much honey you get.
Makes sense.
Then there's the training programs, teaching people how to deal with bee diseases and raise queen bees, things like that.
Ah, the essential skills.
Exactly.
So it's not just throwing money at the problem. It's about giving those communities what they need to really succeed over the long haul, right?
Yeah.
It's about sustainability.
Totally. And it's not just the big guys, you know? There are all these local NGOs doing amazing work right there in the communities.
Really? Like what?
They teach people how to do beekeeping the right way. They help people set up those cooperatives we were talking about.
Right.
And they even help connect the beekeepers with buyers directly.
Wow. Sounds like everyone is working together.
They are.
But let's talk about some of the specific challenges, right? Like that access to modern equipment thing.
Yeah.
What kind of equipment are we talking about and why is it so important?
Okay, so think about it this way. You've got your traditional beekeeping methods, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you have something like a centrifugal honey extractor. It's a game changer, seriously.
Is it?
Traditional methods can take forever, and you might not even get that much honey at the end. But with an extractor, you just spin those frames, and out comes the honey.
So much easier.
Way more efficient, and the honey is better quality, too.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I bet that equipment isn't cheap.
No, it's not. And in a lot of rural areas, it's hard to even find.
Yeah, I can see that.
Transportation can be a problem, and just getting it to where it's needed can be really expensive. And even if you can get it, a lot of small farmers just can't afford it.
So it's like a double whammy. Infrastructure problems.
Yeah.
AD cost.
Exactly.
And what about the training?
Oh, yeah.
The article said that was a big obstacle, too. What kind of training are we talking about?
Well, there's the basics, of course, like how to take care of the hives.
Right.
But you also need to know about diseases, how to raise queen bees.
Wow.
Even business stuff like marketing and finances.
Sounds like a lot to learn.
It is. But it's all super important if you want to make honey farming work for you in the long run,
It makes sense. Are there programs made specifically for African beekeepers? Since their situation's a little different.
There are. And that's a really good sign. People are starting to understand that you can't just teach everyone the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You have to consider where they are, what the environment is like, what the economy is like. And they're making sure these programs are easy to get to A&D affordable, which is like the most important thing.
So it's all about empowering those communities, giving them the knowledge they need.
Exactly.
Speaking of empowerment, the article mentioned market integration is a big challenge, and that's something you know a lot about.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us? What does it mean for the people making honey in Africa?
It's all about connecting the people who make the honey with the people who want to buy it.
Yeah.
And making sure those buyers are paying a fair price.
Right.
But a lot of these small honey producers are way out in the countryside.
Yeah.
And they don't always know how to reach those buyers or how to negotiate.
They get kind of lost in the shuffle then.
Exactly. And then you have these middlemen who come in, they buy the honey for cheap.
Uh-oh.
And the beekeepers end up making very little money. It's about cutting out the middleman and getting that honey straight to the market, both locally and internationally.
Okay, and that's where the cooperatives help, right?
Yeah.
They can team up and get better prices.
Exactly. They can work together to market their honey, make it look good, and make sure it's good quality so that buyers really want it.
It's like they become a brand, almost.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's switch gears for a second and talk about the environmental side of things, like deforestation.
Yeah.
That sounds like a huge GE problem for bees.
It is. Forests are like grocery stores for bees. They need all those different flowers. But when people cut down the forests, it's like they're taking away the food, and not just ANY food.
Right.
The article said that the variety of food is really important, too. It is.
Why?
Well, different bees like different flowers, right?
Makes sense.
So when you have a lot of different plants, all kinds of bees can find something they like.
Yeah.
But when you cut down forests and replace them with one type of crop, it's like only having one thing on the menu. And that makes the bees weaker, more likely to get sick,
So it's all about keeping things diverse and complex, right? To keep the bees healthy.
It is. It makes you realize how connected everything really is, doesn't it?
It really does. And then there's pesticides,
Right.
which the article said can be really bad for bees.
They are. They can kill them outright
Oh,
or make them really weak and sick.
that's awful. It's
Yeah.
crazy, right? We use pesticides to protect crops, but then they end up hurting the very things that help those crops grow.
Ooh, it is kind of ironic, isn't it? It shows how sometimes we focus on the short term and forget about the bigger picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
But are there any countries in Africa that are actually doing something to control pesticide use to help the bees?
There are. And it's not just governments either.
It's really good to know that people are looking out for the bees, taking steps to protect them. It sounds like a lot of good things are happening around honey farming in Africa.
There are. And you know what? I think it's really important to step back for a minute
Yeah.
and think about WHY. Honey farming is getting so much attention. It's not just about honey. It's about how it affects whole communities and the environment.
Yeah, you've mentioned that ripple effect before. I want to hear more about that.
Okay.
What are some of the things that happen because of honey farming that we might not see right away?
So we've talked about the money part, right? And how it helps make sure there's enough food
Right.
and those problems like deforestation and pesticides.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out even more and think about honey farming as a way to protect nature, help communities grow.
Okay. So it's about more than just the economy. But how does honey farming actually help with conservation?
Well, if you want more beekeeping, you need more plants that bees like, right?
Right.
So it encourages people to plant those kinds of things to fix up places that have been damaged. And that doesn't just help bees.
Yeah.
It helps all sorts of plants and animals.
So it's like a boost for biodiversity. It almost sounds too good to be true. Are there any downsides we should think about?
There are always things to consider, like if honey production gets too big, too industrial,
Yeah.
it could be bad for those small sustainable farms we were talking about. But overall, I think it has a lot of potential to do good things for the environment.
It's about finding that balance then
Mm.
between growing the economy,
Yeah.
A&D protecting nature.
Exactly.
And what about the social impact? The article talked about how honey farming can help people who are often left out, like women and young people.
It's true. It gives them a way to make money, learn new skills, even be leaders in those cooperatives. And since honey farming isn't always as physically hard as other types of farming,
Right.
it can be a good option for women who might not be able to do those other jobs.
Right. We were talking about the Sweet Success Project in Tanzania,
Yeah.
that women-led cooperative that's doing so well. Are there other projects like that, but focused on helping young people?
Absolutely. There are programs specifically for them to teach them about beekeeping, give them skills, and help them feel like they have control over their future,
Yeah.
It's about creating jobs that mean something and stopping so many young people from being unemployed, which is a huge problem in lots of African countries.
So it's not just about giving them a job. It's about making them feel like they belong, like they're part of something.
Exactly. And the cool thing is when these projects are successful, they inspire others. When people see how honey farming is helping, they want to do it too. And that creates this wave of positive change.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things today. What would you say is the main takeaway for our listener? The person who's really passionate about making the world a better place. Why should they care about honey farming in Africa?
The main thing is this. Honey farming in Africa, it's not just a business, it's a solution. It helps protect the environment, helps people make money, and helps communities become stronger. It's like a model for how we can have a future where people and the planet can do well.
That's a great way to put it. It's about resilience, it's about community, it's about hope. And what I think is really cool is it's just getting started,
Yeah, there's still so much we can do.
So much potential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With more support, more creativity, and a commitment to doing things the right way, honey farming could change so many lives and places all over Africa.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into honey farming in Africa. I don't know about you, but I found it super interesting and inspiring.
Me too.
Don't forget, you can find links to the Sweet Success Project and those other projects we talked about in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into something awesome.